Medic Mind. Motivate, mentor, maximize.
Welcome to Lesson 7, Writer Questions. And in this tutorial, we'll look through questions which are centered around opinion and are centered around an author. Writer questions are based on the author's opinion. So all passages obviously have a writer, but in most passages in the UCAT, the writer remains anonymous. Whereas in writer questions, they're at the forefront and the questions are based on the writer. For example, the question could say, which of the following would the author most likely agree with? Which of the following does the author cite as a reason for the recession? The author's strongly stated opinion is... For writer questions, we can still use the keyword method. However, we would advise you to spend an extra time on step 1 because it's so crucial to understand the general opinion and the purpose of the passage. Remember, we originally advised you to read the first 2 lines only of the passage. With writer questions, we'd recommend reading both the first 2 and the last 2 lines of the passage to fully understand the writer opinion. Bear in mind, for these questions, we are mainly focusing on the view of the author, not additional facts he gives without an opinion. In this example of a passage, it says, many organisations claim that it is harder than ever to get a place at medical school. However, it's a shame that the quality of education has not risen over time. In this passage, the purple shows a general fact and observation, whereas the red shows an author opinion. Therefore, if the question statement said, the author believes that it is harder than ever to get a place at medical school, the answer would be can't tell. The author is just observing that many organisations claim this, but he does not say he believes it's true. The phrase, it is a shame, is very indicative of an opinion, so we can say that the author believes that the quality of education has stagnated or declined, but we can't say that the author believes it is harder than ever to get a place at medical school. So, to recap, we extended step 1 slightly to fit in the last 2 lines as well. So step 1 would involve reading the first 2 lines and the last 2 lines of the passage to understand the general author opinion. Secondly, we would pick a key word from the question statement. Thirdly, we would search the passage to find the key word, and you would read from the sentence before to the sentence after. Fourthly, you'd eliminate the incorrect answers and select the correct one. In some questions, they may ask you to find the writer's strongest opinion. The conclusion is most likely to be found in the final paragraph, so this is the best place to look for first. And the strongest opinion might be the one which is talked about the most number of times, it could be the one discussed in the most detail, or it could be the one present at the end. And you want to be careful with these questions. If the question said, which of the following would the author most likely agree with? You want to bear in mind that all of the statements could be mentioned in the passage. A, B, C, and D could all be opinions of the author. So if you look at A and find it in the passage and find the author mentioning A, then don't immediately choose A as the answer because you need to assess all of the statements and find the one he feels most strongly about. Whereas, in contrast, if the question said, which of these is an opinion of the author, or which of the following would the author agree with, then the 3 wrong answers would not be mentioned or would be things that the author disagrees with. So if you saw A mentioned by the author in the passage, then you can immediately choose that as the answer and move on. And as we said before, to find the strongest opinion, you can look for indicator phrases, such as most important of all, the most pressing issue is, or this is very important. So let's have a go at an official UCAT past question. So the rest of these questions throughout all of the tutorials and the many questions and mocks in the UCAT Medic Mind books are written by Medic Mind themselves. However, we've put in this official UCAT past question from the official website to give you an example of an alternative passage, which is an official question. And this is a very good example of an author question. And the question says, which of the following would the author most likely make in order to increase the popularity of golf? The answer here is C, reduce membership rates. There's not a great keyword for option C, so we're just looking through the passage. And remember we said, look towards the end first, because that's the best place to look for the author's most strongest opinion. And remember, it's asking us which change would he most likely make. So we could mention A, B, and D as changes that he might make, but C is the strongest change. And looking towards the end of the passage, we see that he says that it's unfortunate that many people can't play golf. And he says that if more affordable, golf is a beneficial activity in terms of exercise and social interaction. Therefore, the answer is C, reduce membership rates. However, because it's asking for a strongest opinion, we have to look at the alternative options to make sure they aren't expressed more strongly by the author. Looking at A, extend opening hours. That's found in the second paragraph, where he says that many clubs are forced to keep grounds open where they may have normally closed. This is an example of a fact. And remember, we looked at this earlier. You want to distinguish between the facts that the author mentions and opinions that he gives. This is not an opinion of the author, so the answer is not A. Looking at B, returf the green. Well, we find that in the first paragraph, but again, he doesn't give an explicit opinion on the returfing of greens. He just mentions that many greenkeepers are keeping the greens open when normally they would have closed. And looking at D, there's no reference to discounts or businesses. So the answer is C, and notice the answer lied in the last paragraph. Looking at a second question now. According to the passage, the author believes that golf is the answer here is D, improves well-being. So this is a question where it's not asking for the strongest opinion, but just asking for an opinion of the author. So if we saw D in the passage, we could choose that as the answer straight away without having to look at A, B, and C as we had to for the previous question. And looking towards the end again, it says that golf is a beneficial activity in terms of exercise and social interaction. And therefore we can infer that it improves well-being. Looking at the other options. A is accessible to everyone. Well, we find that in the last paragraph where he says that it's unfortunate as we have a larger population of older people than ever before. And if more affordable, golf is a beneficial activity. So this is inferring that it's not accessible for everyone, because he advocates cheaper prices to make it more accessible for people. Looking at B, should be a luxury. Well, in the last paragraph, it says that golf is once again seen as a luxury that people can live without in order to save money. However, he's just stating that this is an opinion of the population. He's not saying that it should be a luxury. And quite the contrary, he is talking about it being more affordable and wanting it to be more affordable so more people can afford it and play it. And looking at C is a man's game. Well, the author mentions that more women have been involved than ever, he doesn't mention any opinion on wanting to keep it to just men. So therefore the answer is D. And again, look, the answer is found in the final paragraph. So as we said, this is the best place to look for author questions. One thing to bear in mind for author questions is that timing can be very difficult. When you're trying to find a fact, you can sometimes find it in 2 or 3 words in a single line. But to find an opinion, sometimes you have to read 4 or 5 lines or a whole paragraph. And therefore it can be very time consuming to do writer questions compared to scientific passages or factual passages. Therefore, be careful not to spend too much time, and if you're struggling, especially with questions asking for the author's strongest opinion, then guess it and move on. Let's carry on with the same passage and move on to the next question. Which of the following can be inferred from the passage? The answer here is C. Fewer people play golf now than have done previously. And one trend you'll see here is that we're finding it difficult to see keywords. And this is a common trend for author questions, because in these questions, they're very based on opinion. And in comparison to factual passages or scientific passages, which we'll look at later, in which it's very easy to find a keyword, it's very difficult to find a keyword in these author questions. Looking towards the end of the third paragraph, again taking us towards the end of the passage, not the last paragraph, but towards the end, we see that golf is talked about as a leisure activity, and when finances are tight, people are choosing not to spend large sums on membership fees and even on pay and play. Therefore, we can infer that fewer people play golf now than have done previously. And this is something which we can tell from the whole gist of the passage. The title is called Decline in Golf. And again, this question is not asking for the strongest opinion, so we can just choose C and move on without looking at A, B, or D. But we will go through each of A, B, and D just to explain why they are not the correct answer. Looking at A, playing golf is now the best exercise for elderly people. A good keyword here is elderly, and this takes us to the final paragraph, where it says, if more affordable, golf is a beneficial activity in terms of exercise and social interaction, both of which are so important to an aging population. So yes, golf is a good activity for elderly people, but it doesn't say it's the best activity, and we can knock A out on the extreme language technique that we learnt earlier in tutorial 4. Looking at B, playing golf is cheaper now than it ever has been. Well, the key word here would be to look for a price reference, or look for the word cheaper. It mentions in the second paragraph that many clubs are now offering huge discounts to encourage membership, so playing golf is becoming cheaper than it has been previously. However, we can't tell that it's been cheaper now than it ever has been. Again, it's extreme language. Think about the old days when golf probably first started. It must have been a very simple sport, which is a very simple stick and a ball which they might have played on open land. It probably would have been free to play back then. So thinking logically, it's quite unreasonable to say that playing golf is cheaper now than it ever has been. And even if this is true, we can't be sure based on the passage. Again, it's extreme language. Looking at D, more women play golf now than businessmen. This is a slight adjustment because the passage is telling us that more women are playing golf. However, we don't know that more women are playing than businessmen. So for these questions, you might ask, do you look at statement A, then B, then C, then D in chronological order? Or do you go to a certain letter first? Well, the average UCAT student might say that I looked at A first, then B, then C, and then found C to be right. and I got the answer after 50 seconds. Not too bad. Well, we teach our Medic Mind student to be like this. I assessed the statements and within a few seconds marked C as the most likely based on some simple factors. So I decided to start with C and look at the rest after if need be. Got the answer after 30 seconds, right on time. Well, you might be asking, what are these simple factors? So let's go through them. There are 3 things you can use to assess the statements before you look at them individually, to help you decide which one you should look at first. And these 3 things are extreme language, good keywords, and common sense. If you see statements with extreme language, they're less likely to be true, so look at them last. If you see statements with really good keywords, such as numbers, they'll be easy to assess, so look at them first. If you see statements that seem unlikely based on common sense, then look at them last, and vice versa. So for this question, quickly scanning the statements just for a few seconds, 5 to 10 seconds, we can see that statements A and B use extreme language, so they're less likely to be true. And statement D, by common sense, is unlikely because we know that many businessmen play golf. So we'll look at statement C first. And bear in mind, we're not teaching you to pick statement C as the correct answer and move on. No, you can't knock out solely based on these presumptions such as extreme language and common sense, but it gives you a hint that C is more likely to be true, so it's the best place to start. Because if you can find the answer to be C early on, you'll save yourself having to assess A, B, and D. So going on to another example now. The author suggests that which of the following is happening as a result of the economic downturn. The answer here is A. Golf clubs are looking for alternative ways of generating income. Well, the question is not asking for the strongest opinion, and therefore, as soon as you find A, you can choose it as the right answer and move on. And again, it's difficult to find a key word here. So scanning shows us that in the second paragraph it says that some clubs are moving into private hire to generate income. The passage says more affluent clubs are surviving by diversifying and opening their facilities for private hire and various other functions and events. So therefore the statement is A is correct. Knocking out the rest. Statement B, only the more affluent golf clubs are surviving financially. Well, a good keyword here would be affluent clubs. But the statement is using extreme language because it says only the more affluent clubs are surviving. And in paragraph 2, it does say that more affluent clubs are diversifying to survive, but it doesn't mean that no non-affluent clubs have not survived. Statement C, all the clubs are now staying open when conditions are unfit for play. Well, looking for the keyword conditions, we found that in the first paragraph, where it says that under these conditions, the greenkeepers would have normally closed the course in order to preserve the greens. Therefore, some clubs are staying open when conditions are unfit for play, but we don't know that all clubs are staying open. It just needs one club in the whole of the UK to close when conditions are unfit for play for this statement to be false. And then D, more of the population are suffering from loneliness and depression. Well, the keywords loneliness and depression take us to the final paragraph where it says that many of the aging population are suffering from this, but it doesn't say that this is as a result of the economic downturn. Applying the same technique from before. Remember, we can use extreme language, we can use the search for keywords and use common sense to choose which statements we should look at first. Well, statements B and C use extreme language, and C seems unlikely from common sense, because if, for example, there was lots of snow, which means conditions are unfit for play, then it's quite likely that at least one club in the UK would close. So therefore, statement C from common sense and extreme language is unlikely to be true, and statement B from extreme language is unlikely to be true. Therefore, we would look at statements A and D first, and statement A is correct on this occasion.
Thank you for watching this free Medic Mind tutorial. For £30, you can unlock all 150 tutorials in our online course. The course covers 4 full days of UCAT teaching, as well as a course to help you with your personal statement and interview. You're free to ask as many questions as you'd like to our teachers, and with each tutorial you can read along using our 5 UCAT ebooks covering 500 pages of theory and questions to guide you every step of the way.